We're with Tony Carr, the owner of Lois Lane, a Wylie 39?
Wylie 40.
Wylie 40, built back originally
1977.
1977. It was built for?
It was built to beat Imp. At the time, the fastest boat in the world. It's turned out to be the fastest boat of its time.
Okay. And the boat sailed for a number of years and then had some hard times, and you've been involved with it vicariously and otherwise for the entirety of its life. Mm-hmm. And then you came into possession of it back in when?
I got it in 2012, May 2012.
And it was in pretty hard shape back then.
Yeah, at that time the rig had fallen down and there was a big hole in the deck. And Tom Bliss had made it perfect in almost every other way. If you looked at it aesthetically, it was beautiful.
Okay.
But it had a lot of rot, and that's basically what I've been working on ever since.
Yeah, and it was definitely a project boat then.
Yeah.
And was it a lot more of a project than you first thought, or were you kind of expecting it was going to take some time?
I expected it. I gave myself 5 years to work on it.
Okay.
I have a 6-year-old daughter, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to go sailing for a while, and so I just worked on it, kind of steadily for the last, 5 years now.
Okay, and when you first took possession of it, you had it here in Brickyard Cove in Richmond. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I needed a spare bedroom, when we had guests come over. I live in the condos up above, and so I was pretty much stuck in the mud all the time. We were in a place where the dock was, a little too shallow to hold the keel. So I just sort of, did a little bit of work on it. It was a pretty menacing job at the time. I'd never worked on something this, elaborate. So it took me about a year to get the courage to, start picking at it.
Okay. And when you started picking at it, you had mentioned that picked a little bit too deep.
Yeah, there was the keelson was rotten, and I took a screwdriver to the keelson and I started pulling it away, and the keelson disintegrated, and along with the keelson, one of the layers, the inner layers of the cedar at one of the through holes rotted away, and we had a leak. It wasn't a terrible leak, but it was bad enough where I knew I had to get it out of the water and start fixing it.
Okay, and then what transpired after that?
So I called Tom in the middle of the night.
Tom Wylie.
Yeah, Tom Wylie, and he said, well, why not take it out of the water and bring it to Rutherford's? And so I went, almost immediately over and talked to Jeff Rutherford about it.
And you got a sweet deal.
Well, yeah, it's his deal. I mean, it's the way he works. Everything was $500.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that was what year?
That was, I would say 4 years ago from now. So that would be 2013.
Okay.
It was right during the America's Cup.
Okay. And you've been working on it pretty diligently since.
Steadily, yeah.
Steadily. And round us off some of the projects that you've actually done on it.
Well, it started structural. All four corners were rotten in one way or the other. The bulkhead had been separated. The one that held the shrouds, and that's what started this whole project.
And that was because it was cut out.
Because it was cut out, but also because it wasn't really attached to the side of the boat.
Okay.
I mean, when I literally pulled the thing away, and there was just
Okay.
And then the stem turned out to be rotten, so I rebuilt the stem fitting, and the transom where the backstay attached needed to be beefed up for for this hydraulic backstay. And so I had to redo that, cut a big hole in the foam. And then we put these chain plates all the way out to the tow rail, and thinking that we can bring the spreaders all the way out and swept back a little bit, so this could be a single-handed boat rather than what it was, which was something that you had to have the runners and you had to have a crew to even take out on a day sail.
Okay. And along with that, you had you had a hole in the side that you needed to patch. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, back in 1990, I think, the Boston whaler had run into the side of it, and their solution at the time was to paint it. Took the whole boat and paint it. And I remember the boat from when it was a wood boat, and I saw the wood. And one day I was getting ready to repaint it because there was a lot of kind of cracks in the skin, and I started peeling it away, and the whole skin came off in sheets. And a day later, all of the original fiberglass that that covered the wood,
Yeah.
was gone. I was able to take it off with a heat gun, and mostly just by hand pulling it off.
Yeah.
And from that point on, it was time to bring it back.
Right. And so she's back to her original, glorious, beautiful, cold molded self for the most part.
Yeah, there were parts like where the patch was that would have been cost prohibitive to actually bring it back to the mahogany. So Zane working and Taya Becker worked on it and painted it to a point where most people can't even recognize where the patch was in the first place.
Okay, so it's 90% cold molded with a touch of glass on top.
Yeah, touch, exactly. Touch of paint.
Okay, and then you got the boat out of Rutherford's about a year ago, you say?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, and brought her back over here, but still had work to do?
Well, I had to get the rig, and that was the big challenge for me. I don't have any money.
Back with Tony here, talking about financing. Got the mast in, and that was in June of this year?
That was June of this year.
Okay.
Kim Desenberg helped to put it in. It was one of his last things he did in his career. And then I got a call about 2 weeks later from Bill Sr., and he said, I want to take my son and his grandson out sailing on August 12th. And at that point, I had to figure out how to get sails. He said he'd get me sails, so he got me a FAR 36 jib. And the FAR 36 main, unfortunately, has such a huge roach that I ended up having to get something else. And so I looked into the J120. I found sailboat data that the specs were pretty close to my rig. Went into the J-class, association, and found a guy who had a couple sails that he was willing to part with. And at that point, I don't remember the guy's name. Should I tell you the guy's name? Or
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah, so we just know you got a J120 main and a FAR 30 jib.
FAR 36 jib. All of the standing rigging comes from the Artemis camp. When we scrapped the camp, we ended up with a bunch of line. And so the boat's still kind of pieced together, but it's pieced together with some pretty good stuff.
All right. And tonight it's going to be your first beer can in it?
This is the first beer can. My goal was to do a beer can this summer, and this seems to be one of the last ones, and looks like we're going to do it.
All right. Congratulations.